Steve Murphy, Wes Tabor, and Chris Feistl. Welcome back to the show.
Man, thank you for doing this again, Patrick. This is it's taken us forever to get started because it's so much fun just hanging out with
It is all we're
That's
doing is laughing.
always a good time, Patrick. Thank you.
but
Absolutely.
we did.
Appreciate it.
So back in late in October, Steve, Wes, and Chris predicted on the Cops and Writers podcast, those were episodes 250 and 251, that the U.S. would take the fight to Maduro and attack on land. But I don't think any of us really thought it would happen this quickly. On January 3rd, the U.S. captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, in a military operation in Caracas, Venezuela. Did you guys think it would happen this quick?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And let me just say a few things. I'm sure I speak on behalf of Wes and Steve before we get started. Is one, I'd like to congratulate all of the men and women in DEA for the fine job that they have done on the case against Nicolas Maduro. Not only against him, but if you look back in history, some of the most significant cases have been done by DEA. You go back to 1989 with Manuel Noriega. It was under very similar circumstances. He was wanted in the US on drug trafficking charges. We kind of went in there, brought him out, put him on trial. He got sentenced to 40 years. The investigation against Juan Orlando Hernandez, the president of Honduras, same thing. Great work by the men and women at DEA. Victor Bout, one of the world's biggest armed traffickers, cases done by DEA. So, in light of everything that they've done, I just want to say thank you and congratulations to all the men and women at DEA for the fine job that they've done over the last 50 years on these international cases.
Absolutely. Of everything that we've seen coming out in the last few days related to Maduro and Venezuela, you got to love seeing those DEA jackets escorting that jackass off the plane, on the plane, walking through the New York DEA office. We saw the DEA administrator was there with him. You got Frank Turallo, who was the SAC of New York City, was in there. Super people, superheroes. And ladies and gentlemen, heroes, not all heroes wear capes, just like the saying goes. Guys made us
Absolutely.
proud.
Yeah, I was more than impressed with all of this, to tell you the truth. But, I wanted to talk about this again because, the last time we were talking about drug boats. But, you guys saw the bigger picture, and it's like, yeah, this is going to be more than just us blowing some boats out of the water. There's much more to this. So I wanted people that were experts in this field, and that's what you guys are. Because I think we're really stuck in our little echo chambers. There's two different ways of looking at this. The way I look at it is one, people are in their echo chambers. Oh my God, this is terrible. Trump this and Trump that. And the second thing is, President Trump. The hatred for that man is so deep. I still think if he cured cancer, there'd be demonstrations about him doing it. There'd be like, oh my God, he's in bed with Big Pharma. Oh my God, he's got some like side thing going with this, blah, 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 yada, yada. But I'm not the biggest supporter of President Trump, but you got to give the devil his due. I mean, he's got some big brass balls for doing this, I think.
Absolutely. And I think to get back to your point, I think the writing was on the wall. You would see it started with the kinetic strikes against the speedboats, not only in the Caribbean but in the East Pac. You saw that quite subtle military buildup of surface assets in the Caribbean. You saw that
Oh yeah.
there were these joint training exercises going on with Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, it had to occur to people that the next step was they were going to do some kind of operation very similar to what they did in Panama to go in to arrest Maduro and his wife and anybody else that was there. So it shouldn't come to as a surprise to anybody. And ironically, I had just written an op-ed for Newsmax back on December 4th, and it's supposed to be published in February in their monthly magazine. Now, I don't know if it'll be published because in there I kind of outlined this exact course of action, what I thought would happen, and it was just a matter of time. So I don't think anybody can be surprised by what happened.
And I mean, quite honestly, if you look back at history, you mentioned it just a minute ago, Chris, in 1989 when we were having problems with Noriega, you know, the invasion to go down there to bring him to justice. Yes, it was a military operation in support of law enforcement, which is, I think that's what just happened in Venezuela.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Back in October, the big talk was about the Navy taking out 36, drug boats. Some people said they were fishing boats, but that kind of went away fairly quick. Can somebody refresh our memories why we did this and what gave us the authority to take out these boats?
Well, I mean, let's just let's go back just a touch. So you have Grenada, you have Panama, you have Syria, you have Iran. Where was everyone screaming when we took out the nuclear program? I don't remember anyone screaming when we took out the nuclear program. Yeah, it's a very different kind of situation, obviously. It's much more grave. Venezuela has terrorism embedded in their government. We have Hamas, we have Hezbollah, we have IRGC, we have FARC, we have ELN. Within the Western Hemisphere, we have a fostering of all these bad characters. We have all the gangs, we have the colectivos, which mainly stay in Venezuela. Colectivos are like their version of the who are the guys that walk around with the umbrellas? The Antifa.
Okay.
That's their version of Antifa. But then we had Tren de Agua, which started, and this is something we're going to hear about, started in Aragua and went into the prisons, kind of expanded, went into Latin America. Then the borders opened, and where did they send them to? To the United States, right? So we have all these myriad of characters converging in Venezuela. We have all the transit drugs. We have heroin, obviously, coming from Colombia, and cocaine coming from Colombia. It's transiting through. We got about 25% cocaine derivative coming to the United States through the Caribbean. And then we have another maybe 75%, 70% going to Europe, okay, of that cocaine. And so when you look at Article 2, we have all the designations. We designated terrorist groups, these Tren de Agua, the Cartel de las Solas, which is the government in essence that calls themselves the cartel, headed by Nicolás Maduro. We have Cilia Flores, the wife of Maduro. She's part of it as well. We know that they're working with Tren de Agua and other nefarious characters like the FARC and so forth. So that's when Trump designates them. Then he says, well, we don't have to do an act of war. They're designated terrorists. We're going to use Article 2 of the Constitution to take care of this imminent threat, which it is. 1.3 million people in our country have died over the last decade. All right. Just the humanitarian crisis within the Western Hemisphere of the 8 million displaced Venezuelans throughout our hemisphere and others, because there's 38 million roughly Venezuelan people. 30 are still, 29, 30 are still in Venezuela. 8 million were displaced, right? So they're all over the place. So Trump's like, we're just going to go ahead and do this. And then he sent the flotilla down there. We started blowing up these little launches that were coming out, which, by the way, according to my information, it's pretty good information on the ground in Venezuela. All those little boats coming out with dope, and I say little, we're talking they're holding a ton of coke apiece or even more, right? They're coming up, and that is Tren de Agua, along with colectivos and so forth, and that money is going back into the Cartel de las Solas through Celia Flores to the Maduro camp. So that kind of sums it up. But also, we do have the authorized use of military force that we can, that bill. I mean, we have since 9/11, we were using authorized use of military force as well. So that's kind of the whole thing in a nutshell when it comes down to it. In my view, what I understand, ask these guys what they think.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Everything that you said. And plus, Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution gives President Trump the authority to go in and do exactly what he did, just like he did in Panama, just like what they did against bin Laden. He has absolute authority. It's been tried, it's been argued, it's been litigated in court, it stood the test of time. So, I'm sure those arguments are going to come up again, but it's proven there's precedent for it, and it should go no further than that.
Not to mention the original indictment on Maduro came out in March of 2020.
20, exactly.
All these, here we are almost 6 years later before finally action was taken. And we talked about this the first time we got together, this ridiculous term that's called the war on drugs. It's taken this long. There have been incidents where it does appear like there's a war, and all three of us have participated in some of those incidents, but it's not a war where, we had 150 aircraft coming in to support us like they had, just a couple days ago down in Venezuela. They were sending two or three of us at a time out there to do things.
Yeah.
That's not a war. It's a joke, if anything. So it's just, you know, a lot of people say, well, you're getting long in the tooth. Yeah, I am. But it just shows from experience, it took us this long to actually have events that even remotely resemble a war on these drugs. In my opinion, just like I said last time, it's about time. It's long overdue.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Agreed.
And I wanted to point out, the United States military, most likely SEAL Team 6, Delta operators, performed the surgical strike, taking Maduro and his wife without hurting them. 6 of our servicemen were injured and an aircraft was damaged, but all U.S. personnel and equipment made it back to those sea vessels. It just blows my mind that they were able to pull something off like that. It should be noted, the professionalism and the skill of these operators that did this. Also, the incredible quality of the intel that made all of this possible.
Well, you look at the and I'll leave it to Wes to talk about the intel side, but you look at these operators, they are, we say they're the best in the world. They prove it time and time again. They are the
Absolutely.
best in the world. And here's the telltale sign. You got Maduro in his castle, whatever the heck it is he lives in, and they are coming in force, and he can't even get enough advance notice from his own people to give him time to get into his secure room in the same house he's living in.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me that's not professionalism. But that also reveals how weak his military really is. It's just, it's smoke and mirrors.
Yep, how weak they are and how really tactical and superb that our military is. And it's my understanding that they had a replica of the facility that Maduro was living in, that they trained in it, they practiced in it, they rehearsed in it, they knew every room inside and out. And it just shows you the preparation and the intel that we had to go in there and pull that off as fantastically as the military did.
Absolutely.
Wes,
Yeah,
you got
when you look
anything?
at the fact that they did this total extraction or rendition in a sense, right, in a matter of less than 2 hours, really, when you're looking at like I think Trump had said like 1:30 till like 3:30 or something
Yeah.
like that, to do everything they did in that short period of time. So their rehearsal, and we've heard about this with the Bin Laden raid, we've heard about this with other raids. When they rescue hostages, I think that Jessica, I can't remember her last name, when they went and rescued her, how
Mm,
they practice,
right.
practice. And it goes wholeheartedly to what's the scenario look like. And we, for cops, right? Like when I was on SWAT, which is no comparison what these guys are doing. I'm just trying to put it in my feeble mind, how this comes down, right? You get the intel, you're looking at schematics, you're understanding a picture of who this person is, you're doing all the psychology on the people and all this stuff, and you go in, right? So I'm kind of when I look at it, and I know a lot about the intel that was fed to this. I'm not going to get into it, but the bottom line is the details are where it's really important, right? And Trump talked about how they were talking about the doors, the thickness of the doors, what the doors were, how he tried to get into this one locked door secure area and he couldn't even get the door closed before our guys were on top of him. And
Mhm.
Steve mentioned that. That's precision, and not only precision, but I mean, we're just talking. These guys are the best in the world. They have been fine-tuned from the last 25 years of what we were doing in the Middle East, and now they're bringing it home to the Western Hemisphere. We're going to clean up our backyard. I say this all the time. I can't say it enough. It's time to clean up our backyard and put these guys, their surgical instruments, to use in our hemisphere.
Yeah.
Plus, it's my understanding too that if he made it into that safe room and he concealed himself inside, that the military was equipped already with blowtorches ready to cut that door down. So that just shows you the planning and the thought process that they had. They were prepared for pretty much anything to happen.
It
Yeah,
just
they
makes me
could
so
listen. They
proud
could have
of them.
saved. They could have saved all the trouble and dropped a bomb on it and took them
Yep.
out. When they hit some of the, and this is some of the reporting coming out. They hit the Sabine headquarters, right? The like secret police. They hit the headquarters and blew it up. They also blew up where Simon Bolivar's, this all the memorabilia and Chavez is buried as well in that little tomb mausoleum area. They blew that up. That was probably just for,
For
here you
That's
go,
exactly what that
kind of
was.
thing, right? But what a great little touch there, by our military.
Yeah, it just goes to show when you have everybody working in cooperation in concert with each other. Obviously, there was intelligence assets that were communicating openly with our military in order for all this to happen and to keep it a secret for as long as, yeah, I mean it's like you said, they have like a little mock-up of this like compound. I mean, to keep all that under wraps because that wasn't one day of training. That took a lot. And for everybody to keep their yaps closed and for all those pieces to fall into place, and of course, there's going to be unsung heroes that you'll never hear about
Mhm.
that were assets in country. There's, I'm sure, CIA officers, their agents, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many tentacles to this. And it just went off pretty much without a flaw. It was amazing to me.
Yeah.
So Patrick, let me throw something out that might be controversial, but
Okay.
it's something that I've always said, and I think I've even talked to Steve about this before offline, is that look at how quickly and effectively that we were able to do that in Venezuela. Now imagine if some of these countries, i.e. Colombia, Mexico, and others, invited a slew of DEA agents into the country with US military. Now, it's not going to happen. I just why I say it's controversial. How quickly do you think it would take the US military to go after some of these cartels in Mexico and completely eradicate them? If we could do what we did in Venezuela in 2 hours, how long would it take us? Obviously, a little bit longer, but how long would it take in Mexico? And why don't they ask us for that kind of assistance?
Well, and that would be a true war on drugs now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you'd be reaching into their pocketbooks and the corruption money would stop. And then what are they going to do? Might have to get a real job.
That's very, very true. Oh my gosh. Yeah, when you look at it that way, you're 100% right, Chris. I mean, is there an answer? Oh, hell yeah. But like what you said, Steve, with corruption and do they have the stomach for it? And, they're worried about getting reelected, et cetera, et cetera. They're not worried about doing the right thing for the most part. And I know I'm painting with a broad brush here. And I'm sure there's people that have good hearts that are in high places like that. But boy, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point of view, Chris.
Mexico, I really do feel is a different animal. Um, if you look at Colombia, if you look at what happened, after everything, Steve and Chris did, and they kind of took their government back. They kind of implemented all the training with the police officers, to stop the corruption, to kind of, listen, you're a police officer, do the right thing, and the mantras, and they kind of changed everything, shifted it up. There was a real sense of relationship with the United States as well. I mean, how many Colombians, Chris and Steve, when they're singing "Happy Birthday," they do it in English and Spanish to this day. They still do
Hmm.
it, you know? And that doesn't mean it's a perfect relationship by any means, but it's a very, Colombians and Americans, they really have this kind of like bond, okay? You don't have that in Mexico. You don't have that governmental kind of like societal bond. You have, I'm a Mexican and that's a Mexican American, or my cousin's in California and I'm here in Juarez or whatever it might be. But it's really not the same. And the embedded aspect of the cartels and the splintered cartels and what's changing about the cartels in Mexico, because we have all these little fragmented cartels now. When you look at what's happening with Sinaloa cartel, it's just been beaten to death, which is great. Done a great job. CJ&G is still a major, major problem, but I think that's the emerging cartel that we have to deal with. You have golf, and listen, you have a whole bunch of cartels, but when they're splintering and the guerrilla and the savagery, what they're doing there, it's beyond what I've seen, even in Colombia. It's they've lost their country.
How many times, Steve, and I'm sure you can attest to this, how many times did you, and I know that we did as well in Cali, have really good information about where Pablo was or where the Ochoas were, or where Later was, or the Galeanos, any of that information. But by the time that you launched an operation, it was compromised and you didn't grab them. Like I always say, locating these people and putting an operation together to apprehend them are two completely different scenarios. So if you had any kind of special forces on the ground in Mexico, we could track down these leaders of some of these cartels, go in there, quietly take them out. I don't think it would take long to get rid of a lot of the hierarchy of some of these cartels in Mexico just because of that.
Well, so there are some, that are questioning the legal authority for the military to capture them and bring them to justice from a foreign land. Some are calling it kidnapping, which obviously they need to look up the definition of kidnapping. Or why not? Why didn't we go to Congress first? Who would like to tackle those questions?
We don't have to.
Exactly.
We're not going to war. We're doing an extraction. I mean, listen, this is not, it just kills me that we can do this all over the world, and Chris touched on it. We could go and we can do operations in Syria. We can do this. We can do, for 30 years, we can do this stuff and not declare war. But as soon as we come in our backyard, we're trying to clean up the mess, the emerging threat because it's a threat, but now it's emerging to where we have non-state actors and proxies of IRGC and so forth, and they're all coming into 1,300 miles off our coast, 350, 400 miles off the coast of Puerto Rico, and we're going to be now all of a sudden now you're culpable for doing horrible, unauthorized military action. It's just ridiculous. It's just
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And it's Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, which gives us the same authority that we had to go grab bin Laden, to do Noriega, and to do anything else. So it's like I said, it's there's legal precedent behind it, and that's what gives them the authority.
And this, we talked about how this was done in total secrecy. If he had gone to Congress, do you think we'd still be able to say that? And I think we're all losing faith in our Congress. Uh, it's just ridiculous the things that are going on up there here in the United States. But if we're going to tell the members of Congress, I think they should be sequestered until the operation is over.
Yes.
That's how much I trust them.
I'm with you 100%. We talked about this in length the last time we all got together to talk about this, and it even our president sometimes had diarrhea of the mouth where he's saying things that he shouldn't. We're talking about like transparency, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, there are reasons why you have to be quiet about these things, and because there's lives in the balance.
Well, just today on TV, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was on television with the president. After the president spoke, he's given line by line how they were able to determine to plan this operation. And they're talking about the pattern of life, which has been used for years and years, but we don't talk about it because it works. But here they are now. It's like, and I know that's what the media wants, and the American public thinks they need to know everything. There's some things that we don't need to know that protect this country. And that jerk Snowden revealed some of the things he revealed caused cessation of some of the most successful. It's classified, so I can't talk a whole lot about it. But some of the best programs used to protect Americans, and we had to do away with, and they were done under court order. It wasn't just a bunch of cops got together and said, let's do this, let's do that. It was all done with the knowledge of a judge, and it was reviewed every 30 days to make sure it was still within compliance. But yet, because one guy thinks he's doing, the United States good, which just screwed our country left and right. If he ever comes back, I hope he gets the death penalty for treason, for
I
sedition.
had two sources compromised on that. We had to get him out of country where a certain country I was in.
It's
We had
outrageous.
to get him out.
No.
People are glorifying. I heard something about Trump might pardon him or something. No way. That can't
I
be.
hope not.
No way. No, I can't. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked.
All right.
Easy,
Well,
Steve. Easy. I see that.
I'm
All
trying to be
right.
nice.
Well, let's go back in time a little bit. Someone take us back to and give us just a brief background to what brought us to this point. How did Maduro gain this power and what led to his indictment in 2020?
Wes, you probably have the most experience of
Yeah.
all of us.
Well, listen, we had Hugo Chavez, took over Venezuela, the socialistic love of socialism. Come in, what's mine is yours until it's time where the Heisman comes out and I'm taking everything you got, right? Well,
Good
Chavez
analogy.
dies. The vice president then is Maduro. And Maduro's making a killing Remember, he was the head. He was a bus driver. Became the bus drivers union. He's got like a sixth or seventh grade education. I don't know if you saw this last night. Just as an anecdotal little note, when they were bringing him into the main holding area in New York, he said good night, and then he's like Happy New Year. Did you see him say that?
No.
I didn't see it, but I heard.
And I'm thinking, I really think he's mentally challenged.
Mm.
I'm thinking this guy's mentally challenged. Go watch the clips. Anyway, the guy's not all, he's not the brightest bulb in the pack or the sharpest tool in the shed. That's what I'm getting at. But he had the pull of the unions. And that's what got him the presidency. And then when he's in the presidency, what did he do? He just kept doing listen, the machine's rolling. Once you get that dictatorship, all you got to do is have your secret police, your military, Guardia Nacional, Sabine, whatever, PTJ. They had all their elements in place to control the population. And it was a huge brain suck. Everyone that was knowledgeable about anything left the country. And the opposition, there's no opposition in country now. They left. So it wasn't hard for him to maintain his stability there, right? All they have to do is, oh, please feel free to speak up. And then he'd send someone, they'd kill him or throw him in prison. There's tens of thousands of political prisoners there. So the thing is that with these guys, what they did rather than just a normal dictatorship is they were getting their funds and they were seeking out partners that were wanting to bring against the United States of America, the wrath of God, right? The Imperio, the Yankee, and that's kind of what they kind of embraced. But they had to make money. Their oil programs were going to hell. They lost all their engineering. They put Uncle Bob in charge of whatever for the oil company, and he didn't know what he was doing. And everything was failing. That's why Chevron was still there, but they started locking them up too, as leverage. So the bottom line is he maintained what he had because it was already rolling. He wanted the money. He wanted these nefarious actors that could go against the gringo because we were the threat to them living and continuing in power. And ultimately, that's what got him removed. And the FARC, biggest trafficking organization in the world, essentially, right? They shared all those common values against the gringo. They shared all the freedom fighter movement stuff, and they just used it as a transit country and a safe haven, more importantly, because a lot of dope was coming through, a lot of cocaine, a lot of heroin, and all the operations and all that stuff. That's true. But you have to remember, the money comes back. I don't know if you remember, they made the Petro crypto dollar. Do you remember when they did that? It ended up failing because they're trying to launder these hundreds of billions of dollars of funds coming from FARC, coming from Iran, coming from you name it. And so it's just, I always say, and I say it on the news sometimes, and people call me like, "What are you doing?" I say, it's a potpourri of nefarious activities in the country, But anyway, so that's how I sum it up.
Well, you're an author. You can say things like that now.
Potpourri.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's
You can
flowery
use all
language. That's flowery
those
language.
flowery
Yeah.
words.
I wrote an instructional book. It's not even like your guys' book. It's like you guys write actual intellectual thrillers and stuff. I wrote a textbook.
Those guys do. We got a ghostwriter.
So his indictment in 2020, what exactly was the indictment? Like, what was he charged with? Do you guys know?
Yeah,
I've actually got it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I pulled it up. It's narco-terrorism conspiracy to import cocaine into the U.S., related drug trafficking charges, and allegations of corruption and abuse of power tied to narcotics distribution. It was Maduro and 14 current and former Venezuelan officials as co-conspirators indicted in the Southern District of New York. And then the superseding indictment, it just expanded on that. It included a little bit more geared towards terrorism, narcotics-related terrorism, narco-terrorism.
Material support.
So, and just having said that term, did you guys hear the congressman who came out about a few weeks ago and said there's no such thing as a narco-terrorist?
Yes, yeah.
No, I didn't see that.
I did.
Oh my gosh! If he was my representative, I would ask for an impeachment.
Wait, isn't he the Arizona guy, Chris?
I don't think it was Gallego. I think it was somebody else who said it.
I don't remember his name, but I thought,
Who's the guy that
how
was the astronaut?
that's
Kelly.
Kelly.
He was saying something like that too, and he's like,
Yeah, I
"Oh,
don't.
don't going to Europe. What's the big deal? It's going there. It's not coming to us.
Yeah.
Most of it's going there." Yeah.
So
Steve,
anyway,
you,
the
Steve,
super.
all you had to say is put it in Wes's that it was a potpourri of charges against Maduro.
I wish I thought of that.
I expect someone to use that in their next interview at some point. All right.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
absolutely.
All right. So, speaking of going back in time, let's discuss the parallels with Operation Just Cause and the capture and arrest of Manuel Noriega. Yeah, Noriega, we touched on this before. He wound up getting 40 years. He got out with good time. Then I think France extradited him, and then he went back to Panama. He went back to another country. He got a brain tumor and he died.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
what do you see the parallels here?
let me just start by saying it's ironic, if I'm not mistaken, that didn't the invasion into they grabbed
By a couple of days.
Noriega
Yeah.
January 3rd. It was ironically, it
Yeah.
was almost to the day, or was the day 37 years ago. But I think some of the parallels you could draw, I think we talked about, right?
Yep.
Noriega was the de facto leader of Panama, a dictator, an illegitimate president, whatever you want to call him. He was indicted in the U.S. on drug trafficking charges, just the same as Maduro was. And they went in there on pretty much a law enforcement operation to get him out, to take him into U.S. custody, to bring him back to the U.S., and to stand charges on all of that potpourri of charges that Steve just mentioned. So I think there's quite a bit of similarity there.
Yeah, there really is. You
There's
know,
I,
a good thing, and I don't have the kind of sources that Wes does, but I do have a couple sources that are extremely reliable and knowledgeable. And the U.S. was talking to Maduro. They were making offers. I know that one of the more recent meetings, he's like, "Could you go back and tell President Trump I'm not a bad guy?"
yeah.
Sounds like Richard Nixon. I'm not a crook. You guys are probably too young to remember him.
I remember.
think I was born after he came out.
Yeah, you were
You and your
whatever.
potpourri there.
So,
One thing that I'll add, Chris, that'll look better when you have the shirt on that I'm going to
yes, yes, it
All
will.
right, I'll be
Yes,
waiting
sir.
for it.
Who's your rabbi? I think the big thing is Panama. He was a bad dude, right? He was a general and all this other stuff, but nothing compares to what we had in Venezuela with all these state actors from Iran, Syria. We had the proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas. Listen, I can't say it enough. What was converging in that country was a direct and imminent threat to us. And if we didn't stop it, and the foothold of the IRGC and Russia and so forth, and we are, Cuba had a foothold in there for many, many years, but they didn't have that kind of zest and power of reach. Well, Russia does have that, and so does Iran. And let me tell you, they were fresh off of what happened when we hit their bunkers and destroyed their nuke program. What do you think they were doing over here? What do you think they were all flocking here for? It wasn't to give us a warm embrace to the Yankees. They want us dead. They want to kill us. They want to take revenge. And and Trump knew that, and he's like, we're not going to let it happen. We're not going to let it happen.
Well, you look at who their major customers are for their oil. It's all the countries that are anti-US.
Yes.
Yeah. China,
Yeah.
right?
Korea,
Right,
North
Russia.
Korea.
Yeah.
North Korea.
Absolutely. So, there was 19 other people in these indictments. And to make it very clear, there's a valid arrest warrant for this guy. Me
Exactly.
being just a simple, street cop, from a city, it's like, oh, look, a judge signed off on this. A DA looked at it. I mean, it's a very simplistic way to look at it, but it's like probable cause has already been set. A lot of the footwork has already been done. The investigations have been done. All the heavy lifting, for the most part, has been done to make this case against him and 19 other people getting charged. So, was this primarily DEA, do you think, or who else do you think had their fingers in all this?
Well, I mean, I have to say, hats off to DEA, right? So when I went there in 2010, I can't, obviously, I'm not going to get into it, but the job was to what? For number one, gather witnesses. how can we get people from there? And whether that's going to be witnesses that are flipped witnesses from people we arrest. I think we took, I got 4 C pots out of there, a couple R pots, and a lot of HSI targets, you know, and we got them extradited. Long story on that, but that had not happened in like 15 years before I had arrived, right? And we're flying people out. You can Google this stuff and actually see the deportation. So all these criminals, in fact, some of them were Chris's fugitives from the Cali cartel,
North
you
Valley, yeah.
know? Yeah, we had a couple of them, and I hit up Chris, and we first started making contact back in the day on that. We brought him to the S, and I know one of them he went back to Colombia after he served some time, and he ended up getting killed in a hotel room there. But the bottom line is, how do we get witnesses? Well, we flip people, right? So, but they were in a safe haven. They were safe haven in Venezuela. They were paying their way to stay safe, and luckily, I did a lot of operations there. We got a lot of good targets out that flipped, right? But, you have to understand that that government felt so comfortable that they really thought we would never do anything to them because we didn't for all those years. I mean, we're talking 30 years that they were fostering and harboring and creating a permissive environment, in Venezuela with all these horrible criminals. And the flights, have you ever Googled? You can Google all the flight radar searches for all the planes that were leaving Venezuela to Central America. And you just see, when you Google it, you'll see all these lines where the flights, just thousands and thousands and thousands of narco flights would take off outside of different areas in Venezuela to Central America, But so to construct a case against them, it wouldn't take that long, but with Venezuela, it did because they just flee there and just stay there, right? But then over the years, I was there for 3 years and we flipped a lot of people, did a lot of good things. And then they started working we had the outside in, right? So we had SOD, we had Miami, we had Houston. We had a very robust program to start targeting what these dopers were doing and what the Cartel de los Soles was doing. That really took traction probably about 7 or 8 years ago, leading up to the actual indictment in 2020, in March of 2020. That's the year I actually retired. That was a great retirement gift.
And just to add on to that, and remember, Patrick, since it's an indictment in federal court, we can't just rely on intelligence, right? From these different agencies and stuff. We have to rely on evidence, and we get that evidence from witness testimony, as Wes said, cooperating defendants, people who flip, all kind of different stuff. But we have to be able to corroborate and validate that information so that we can use it as evidence in a trial.
So, what do you guys predict for the outcome of this arrest? Time in prison, etc. Where do you see this going?
Well, I think it's going to drag on for quite some time. The United Nations is getting involved. All the other countries are complaining. Uh, Honestly, I really don't care what the United Nations says. We're protecting our country. Hell, we already protect their countries. They ought to thank us. They ought to
Yes.
shake our hands.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah,
ever stop footing the bill for everybody, they'll all collapse.
That's right. And the UN, they have no standing in any of this anyway. So whatever they say is completely useless and immaterial. But there's a couple different options I see how this could play out. One is I think that he can go to trial, get convicted, and be sentenced to life in prison without parole. Because remember, he wasn't extradited, so there's no guidelines on a maximum sentence that he can receive. The other thing too, just keep in mind, there's other people. His wife, I think his son is indicted.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised to see him plead guilty in exchange for charges being dismissed against his wife or his son, or for them serving, very minimal charges. So I think that option is in play as well.
Yeah, it's called leverage.
Well, the venue is interesting too, right? So the indictment was actually primarily done out of Miami, actually out of a Haida group. They actually had a case on him. Some of the most robust evidence is out of Miami. SOD did, the case in Dominican Republic with the cousins of Cilia is like 50 or 60 kilos. I mean, it's a small potatoes case, but still instrumental. We have relative conduct, continuing criminal enterprise. We have all these things that They didn't charge him with that, but we have the enterprise that's continuing. We'll show the linkages and so forth, right? And then tie it to the big monster case to say this is just one of the spokes of the wagon wheel, right, guys? This additional case, it shows the involvement. We have great evidence, whether it's wiretaps, whatever it is. So, but they moved the venue to SDNY. And a lot of people like SDNY because people say,
Jury
well, they'll
pool.
indict a ham sandwich and we'll backfill it later with the evidence we need that we know we're going to get. Everyone knows this, right? It's not a negative term by any means when we say that. But if you want to make an indictment quick and you know you're going to get the evidence to do even further in the prosecution, because you're going to have plenty of probable cause, but you know the witnesses are coming, you know the evidence is there, you just got to pull it all together, get the indictment. New York is not a good venue with President Trump. And that's one of my biggest fears is if he wants to go to trial in New York and they kind of do the old OJ thing, you know, and they say, well, it's Trump's indictment. He removed him. This is illegal. And then if he goes to trial, there could be a very big upset. Unlikely, but it's something I've thought about.
Yeah,
Well,
I think the jury pool though in New York is pretty good, and that's one of the reasons why they indicted him there. And you know, I've been retired a long time, so I'm kind of out of memory on my rules and my laws and procedures. But I think you can rule 20, I think it is, where you can get all of the charges if there's multiple outstanding charges and just rule 20 of them into one district. So I think they're fine there no matter where the indictments are. I think they can still do it in SDNY, get all the charges, get all the evidence there.
No,
But
they are. They're
yeah,
definitely doing they're roll
yeah.
20 everything to SDNY, but I know I'm worried the jury pool is not at what it was even 10 years ago. Everything's changing, you know? I don't know.
well,
It's unlikely, but I just kind of thought about that
Yeah,
scenario
it's a
in my
good
mind.
point though to bring up.
and today here on the news, the local news, they were showing all the celebrations in South Florida for Maduro's. I mean, what a
Yes.
great jury pool to select from down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think Trump had mentioned, like, well, Miami, we're not he said something about Miami. Why
There
is it
was, yeah,
Miami?
Miami
Maybe
and
Miami,
Orlando
we'll
had
look at
the,
that or
yeah.
something. I mean, Pam Bondi could say, "Hey, you're going to put it down in SDFL." Uh, I, I don't see that happening, but he could tell Bondi to rule 20 everything SDFL, get someone primed up, and then like kind of like what they did with Chapo. They TDY'd prosecutors from Miami to New York, Chicago to New York. So they had a whole team there, but they weren't all from SDNY.
But I think SDNY has had pretty good luck or results, whatever you want to say, in some of these high profile convictions, right? You had Chapo, you had KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, you had several others. So, but it is a good point, though. It's definitely worth bringing out and following and seeing how that plays out.
Oh, performance based, I'm not worried about it at all. I'm talking
Right,
politically because
right.
everything is so politically charged now, right?
Understood.
All right. So what do you guys think is next for the country of Venezuela?
Well,
Well, I think you'll see their infrastructure in the oil industry repaired, brought up to date. Um, you know, a lot of people say that this whole thing's based on the oil industry down there, that that's the biggest reason we're doing this. I've I don't completely push that away. I think there is some validity to that argument. But and then some people say, well, only 10% of the drugs are coming out of Venezuela. Was it worth it? Hell yeah, it's worth it. What kind of message are you sending? And one thing we didn't mention is the president of Colombia. Let's see, who did he work with before? He was a commander for who? FARC. And now he's the president of Colombia, which just shocked me when he got elected down there. But you got to be thinking, and Colombia's a strong ally. Probably not so much with him in office, but
mhm.
and I think we've probably cut off the valve to play in Colombia, which means no cash going down there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Rubio's come out now and said that no, we're not going to run the country. We're going to oversee whoever runs that. And what's the lady's name? Maria.
Machado.
Yeah,
Machado.
Child.
that was the leading. She's opposite Maduro.
Yeah,
You know,
she's the
she's
opposition leader. She's been
yeah.
hiding for over a year. And she came out and said, Maduro will face international justice for atrocities, crimes committed against Venezuelans and against citizens. of many other nations. She said the time for freedom has come. She won
Yeah.
the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize, has been hiding in Norway for a year because she's scared she's
Yeah.
going to get killed.
Yeah.
But I think there was some recent reporting, though, if I'm not mistaken, that she was recently in Russia, which is concerning if it's true.
Really?
So, what would she be doing in Russia? Why is she there? What kind of deal is she negotiating there, if in fact those rumors are true? And to follow up on what Steve said, I think it's important to see who actually does get in place and take
Yes.
over and run Venezuela. Because if you're not going to have somebody in there that's going to go in there and clean up that country, you're going to have the same thing that's going on as Russ pointed out, as Wes pointed out. You're still going to have the FARC there. You're going to have the ELN there. You're going to have all these other people sitting in there taking sanctuary, and the country providing them refuge. So if you don't get in there and clean that stuff up in a hurry, you're going to have the same issue years down the road. And I hate to say it, but we may be in that same situation if you don't get the proper person in there to take care of that.
How do
I
we
think you're right.
facilitate that, though?
And I'm glad that Chris brought this up because I was about to come unglued on it because we went through all this trouble to remove Maduro, but yet right now, and Trump said this yesterday, that Delcy Rodriguez, which is the vice president under Maduro, is in charge. And he didn't think Machado was the right person to put in there. And when I heard that, I'm like, what? I met Machado, okay, back in 2011. I met her. Uh, Obviously, didn't go out and have drinks and dinner and all this stuff with her, but I got to meet her as she was going in the ambassador's office and shook her hand, and she was desperate because she knew what was coming. Okay, to hear Trump say she's not going to be the one, I was kind of shocked because it just seemed like the global stage was set for her,
Yeah.
especially with the Nobel Prize being awarded to her, her background, her real struggles there. She has a track record of performance in Venezuela against the opposition. She risked her life to do so. She fled the country. If they would have caught her, they would have imprisoned her. She's knowledgeable. She can speak English, Spanish. She's just all around perfect for that position. And right now, I was just speaking to someone before I came on this, and they're like, "What is going on?" Because Diosdado Caballo, he is armed. The colectivos, Tren de Aragua, and all the malandros that are in the street doing their thing, he armed them. He has a group of military battalions that he said, he and Padrino is another horrible person, and they say we're gonna oppose Delcy, okay, the VP that now the Supreme Court put her in as the president. And it sounds like the USG is counting on Rodriguez, VP now, Rodriguez is now the president, to do the right thing and to fall in line, quote unquote. I
Yeah,
heard
why would
something.
she?
Dude, I have no clue. It's
Mm.
just we're going to risk a total collapse of what the opportunity that we have right
Yeah.
now. And it's going to be interesting to see how we handle that, and that's why we're keeping all the troops, the boats, and everything on standby because Trump says, "Well, I don't think we'll have to do a second wave." So he's kind of using that as leverage, kind of hovering over them, saying, "If she doesn't do the right thing, well, what's the right? You're going to have elections again? How's that going to work? She's going to be the interim president that was underneath the dictatorship. It just,
Well,
come on."
I think he said that because of the rumors that she was in Russia, and we're not quite sure what she was doing there. So that may have played a part in why he said that.
But I just don't understand. She was in the Cartel de los Soles. She's
Mhm.
part of the whole regime, and now we're going to trust her?
Right.
Something about that plan doesn't make sense. I just don't. I'm baffled.
Yeah, I guess only time will tell that. I had some Facebook questions that I threw out. I threw out that while I was going to be doing this. A couple people asked some questions for you guys. One was, as far as narco terrorism, Venezuela is a tiny speck compared to the Mexican cartels. Narco terrorism, in quotes, was the pretext to conduct the raid. It's all about oil and rare earth minerals. And you answer that, was, or
Yeah,
I
yeah.
believe,
You
yeah,
can't even compare the two with what we have going on, the buildup of the terrorists that are converging in that country in Venezuela. We don't have that in Mexico.
all right. Then let's see, Cleveland St. James asks, how do dictators like this, who don't have the support of the people, come to power?
Violence, intimidation, carrying through with their threats, making examples of other people. It's just, if they've got they have to get the military behind them. A dictator has to have the military behind them because that's their enforcement arm.
Sure.
So they put generals in that are loyal to them, that they take very well care of. And then sometimes when there's a disagreement, that's when you see the coups going on in these different third world countries.
Yeah.
And a lot of times too, and you see in these third world countries, with socialism, is that most of the country is populated by people who are poor, right? Venezuela, Colombia, a lot of these other countries, the majority are poor. And when you get in there and you run as president, you offer, kind of like in New York, everything's free. We're going to subsidize this, and you're going to get this. What happens? All the poor people see that, they take advantage of it, and they vote for the person to get them in power. And as you've seen in Venezuela, once they get in power, they don't want to relinquish it because, as Steve said, you have the military, you have the police, you have the secret police, you have all of the forces behind you. So once you get there, once you gain the trust of those people, the poor people that put you there, it's pretty hard to get you out.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys saw, but Mandami's already like negating previous statements that he's made about all kinds of different issues and policy.
Of course he is.
It,
Watch him. That is exactly what happens,
well,
folks.
it's shocking to me how much Americans have embraced socialism, especially younger Americans, it seems like. Because
They don't
maybe they
know.
should look at history books or something, but hey, you know what? My socialism will work. All these other socialisms didn't, but mine will work so much better.
You know
Listen,
that
25 years ago, the towers fell, and now people have, I think, didn't, what was the last big outcry for 9/11, what happened, and remembering 9/11? I think this last year was kind of like, well,
Yeah.
we're not going to put it on TV anymore. We're not going to,
It's a long time ago.
yeah,
That
people
was
and
the
if you
forget
mentality.
and
Yeah.
very
if you
short
guys
memory.
remember when that happened, it solidified this entire country.
It did.
It was unbelievable. And nothing against young people because when I was young, I was probably a rebel too, and probably still am to a large degree. I hate being told what to do. But I mean, why do we have history to start with? We study history to learn from the mistakes we made in the past so we don't make the same mistakes in the future. Well, a lot of our history is being destroyed. It's being taken out of the classrooms.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with that or not, I mean, that's your right, which is what makes us so great here in the United States, to make up your own mind. But it's just those young people are not looking at the history books, just like these guys said, to see what socialism has did. I mean, look at Cuba, look at any third world country, all the communist countries. It hasn't worked in a single place yet. But we're the United States. We're the big bad people in the entire world, and we're going to do it this time. No, you're not. Wait and see what happens in New York. I'm just shocked. I've got some fantastic friends in New York, just like all you guys do. I can't believe they elected that guy.
Well, I was going to say the same thing, Steve. Show me one example where socialism has worked in history.
Doesn't
It
exist.
hasn't. No. And the consequences have been brutal for every country that it was ever tried in.
But was
Well,
it was it and I might have my Russian presidents mixed up. I think it was Gorbachev when he came to a Western European country and saw where there was democracy, and he went into a grocery store and saw that there were food on all the shelves, like our grocery stores are stocked. And his first word was, "This is a setup. This is a propaganda. This is not the way it is in Europe. You guys just set this up for me to see it." And then he realized, oh my gosh, maybe they are onto something. And the next thing you saw, the
The wall
the
came down.
wall.
yeah,
Exactly. Took that damn wall down.
Yep.
that was a big deal. That
Yeah.
was a
Big.
big deal.
Yep.
It's funny, I don't mean to bag on like younger people because I've worked with, young cops in different jobs that I've had, after being a cop. And man, some of them are amazingly hard workers and just really good people. But, what shocked me was the Bernie Bros. During that presidential whole cycle, it's like, oh yeah, Bernie's a socialist. This is going to be so great. And I'm like, And these were like young people connecting to this guy that was older than dirt. That is literally crazy, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
he's bananas. He
And
is absolutely
did you see who gave the oath of office to Mandami?
no.
Bernie.
Oh,
Bernie, yeah.
Yeah, they were doing the hug and slap on the back and everything. Oh yeah.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
that's not a symbol of something, I don't know what is.
And they held a Koran.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Uh,
Oh,
hey, if you
that's
don't
the
like
slippery
living
slopes,
here,
kids.
go somewhere else.
Listen, I love the fire chief. That's all I got to say. You don't get more prepared than that fire chief. The experience. Oh, that's right. She was never a firefighter, was she?
Oh, you're killing me.
Lest I forget.
You know, I interviewed, we were talking a little bit beforehand, my friend Rick Prado, his book Shadow Warrior, and he saw firsthand when he was a kid what communism was. And I said, well, what do you think about socialism? And he said, socialism is communism's little cousin. That's all it is. It just morphs into communism. And you're just fooling yourself if you think otherwise. And these are people that have seen it firsthand.
You know,
And we talked about this kind of stuff, and it's incredibly disturbing.
there's a singer out there called Pitbull. And I'm a Pitbull fan, believe it or not. This old fart, I love Pitbull, but here's why. Because he got in front of an audience. He was able to escape communism in Cuba. He experienced it firsthand, and he told the audience, if you don't like it here in the United States, get the F out. And there were tens of thousands of people there. So,
He's very
I'm a
outspoken.
Pitbull fan.
Yeah, he's very outspoken about it.
Yep.
Well, it's funny you mentioned something like that because long, long time ago when I graduated from college, my one of my first jobs out of college was being a manager at an IHOP. This is very, oh God, I could write a different book about that. But anyways,
Grand
one
Slam, baby.
one of my waitresses,
That's
That's
Denny's.
Denny's, bro.
this is Madison, Wisconsin. This is more liberal than Berkeley. This is like a
Grits or bacon.
totally different world altogether. And every chance she had, oh, America sucks, America sucks, America sucks, blah, 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 blah. And she was going to Russia for like a one semester her junior year. She was going to UW Madison. I said, well, you have fun with that. I hope it works out for you. She came back and she was like crying. She said, there was no food. I was hungry all the time. There was no heat in my dorm. There was a huge hole in the window and nobody fixed it. We didn't have hot water. There was a lot of vodka, but that was about it. And I said, isn't it cool to go to a grocery store and have food in there? Isn't
Yeah.
it cool? Yeah, it's like you have heat in your apartment. No special police are going to come for you because of X, Y, or Z. You can live free and you could badmouth our country and you don't have to worry about somebody coming at 2 o'clock in the morning and yanking you out of your bed and you go into a gulag.
Right.
And let me tell you, when you look at what we were seeing just a couple of years ago, they raided a ex-president's home. I mean,
Yeah.
the Russia, the raiding of the home, the sequence of indictments and arrests in different jurisdictions. It was, and then the appearances of these prosecutors in the White House and Washington, I mean, we were heading on a slippery slope there, man. It's pretty scary stuff to see how fast we can vacillate into potentially sliding into something that could tumble our democracy.
Well, my last view on socialism, the last thing I'll say about it is we've all worked for the United States government for years. Between the four of us, 100 years. And the last person I want conducting my business and getting into all my stuff is
It's
the
the
government.
government.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the last entity. I have friends that are socialists, and they're like, "Oh, it'd be so cool. They could, they'd be in charge of our healthcare. They'd be in charge of this. They'd be in charge of that." And I'm like, they're the last person you want in charge of any of that. I
Yeah, just
mean,
look at the post office.
oh,
Yeah.
My God.
Social Security, they did a whack job on that, didn't they?
yeah. So that's my last word on that. But so let's start wrapping this up. What's next, do you think, in the fight against the poison that's coming into our country? What do you think is the next step? We just we got Maduro out of there. Hopefully, Venezuela will somehow become stable. I guess
I've
we can
heard
hope for that.
from one reliable source that the sights might be set on Mexico. I don't know that they'll go to the extreme we did with Venezuela, but I think there's probably going to be much more involvement than we've seen. You look at the DEA or any federal law, any U.S. federal officer in Mexico is not allowed to carry a gun.
Right.
They don't have diplomatic immunity. They can be arrested. Can you imagine we were all cops. Can you imagine being a cop in Mexico and not allowed to carry a weapon? As
Oh,
dangerous as that
hell
place
no.
is? I mean, let's look back at Kiki Camarena. Let's look back at Victor Cortez. Who's the guy? Who was the agent? There was an FBI and DEA agent that got stopped by Osio Cardenas on the highway.
Joe
Dubois.
Dubois.
Yeah,
Joe
Joe
Dubois.
Dubois. I mean, it just over and over again. So, I mean, and that's just one source, and I don't know that they're in the know, but there's certain programs that are being implemented that might lead to that.
All right.
I mean, do we really want to invade a sovereign nation on our border?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know if that's going to
No.
happen exactly because of that, because of all the cross-border trade
Yep.
that goes on. I mean, we can sit here and postulate as to what might be next, but if you want to throw out, since you said Mexico, you could throw out Colombia as well, because Petro has been on the radar of the U.S. government, especially Trump, for quite some time now. He's an ex-guerrilla, and cocaine. If you look at the production of cocaine over the last 5 years, it's exploded exponentially over that time. So you could make the argument, and by no way, shape, or form of I saying or suggesting that that's going to happen, but you're talking about potential next steps. That's possible, but again, I don't really see that happening as well either.
Gotcha. All right, let's put this to a close. Gentlemen, why don't you promote whatever you have going on, or what do you have going on? Steve?
Oh, just Game of Crimes podcast. Getting ready to go to Podfest 2026 here in Orlando in a couple weeks. Connecting with Jerry Williams, the retired FBI agent who has a phenomenal podcast called FBI Case File Review. Still hiking the book over here, Manhunters, how we took down Pablo Escobar. I know it's getting long in the tooth, but still available. You can see behind me, there might be a couple hundred copies back here. Um, the speaking business, Javier and I are still in the speaking circuit. This 2026 is our 11th year, and we're already booking events for around the world. We're actually scheduled to go to Colombia in February. I'm not sure if that's going to happen now,
Oh boy.
but we'll see how that goes. And the Lost Clipper, the project we were working on that involves the disappearance of 15 Americans in the South Pacific in 1938. We're starting to get some interest from a production company and a network. So our last trip over there was April of 2024. And we took cadaver dogs and we got positive hits and brought back huge samples of concrete that cost an arm and a leg to ship. And we're still paying for everything out of our pockets. So we're hoping that there's going to be some conclusion that comes with that, because that's 15 Americans that just disappeared. We believe the Japanese killed them, and that one of them was carrying $3 million in bear notes, and
Oh,
in 1938 during the Depression. And we believe he had an alibi, but we believe it was ransom to be offered to the Japanese to get Amelia Earhart back, who we
interesting.
believe was an American spy.
Wow. Interesting.
So, and
Yeah,
then there's other things going on.
All right,
I've
Chris.
I've been following that, Steve, and I hope that does get picked up by a production company, because that's a pretty interesting story,
It
and
is.
I'd like to see that come full circle. So good luck with that. I hope that comes about. But now we have the book After Escobar, which talks about the takedown of the Cali cartel and a lot of the political issues that happened during that time in the late 80s and 1990s. It just came out on Audible book December 23rd, so within the last 2 weeks recently. So if you like to listen to books, that's out there. Also, not to get into too much detail, but me and Steve and Javier are trying to put something together with a production company. We have non-disclosure agreements on it, but hopefully in the next year or so we could put something together and get it out there. All we can say is it pertains to Colombia.
Outstanding. Wes?
Yes.
No, I'm just, still purveying this textbook that I wrote, but actually
What's the
it's
name
doing
of
it's
it?
doing
Go
pretty
ahead.
good. But I just finished a manuscript, and now I have to add some other stuff to it with Venezuela, and hopefully that will get some studio attention. I have something kind of going. I can't talk about it too much. And then I'm writing another book. It's actually kind of completed, but I'm not happy with it. It's called Beyond Blurry Lines. Kind of goes through my career, and it has a big focus on Venezuela. Also, I was struck by a drunk driver in 2001, broke my neck, was paralyzed, told I wouldn't walk again. The guy ended up absconding back in 2001, and after I retired, he was found and went to court, and the guy almost killed me and absconded. He had 300 alias names. Anyway, that's another story in itself. The judge gave him probation because he
Of course
was,
they did.
he grew up in a bad home. So anyway, so that book, Beyond Blurry Lines, is hopefully going to come out next summer. So
And
we'll see about that.
the recent one behind your right shoulder there is Infiltrate America.
Infiltrate America. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Blood routes and the rise of Latin gangs. And it basically talks about Tren de Aragua, Cartel de los Soles, Mara Salvatrucha, and how everything kind of formed. It has different specific chapters on each of those gangs and the histories and so forth, and what happened in the United States in the last year or 2 years ago now.
All right. Well, gentlemen, it has been a pleasure as always. It's so much fun getting together with you guys. Thanks again.
Good
Waiting for my
time.
waiting for my t-shirt, Wes.
It's coming. It's coming. I'll put it in the mail.